Some people need reassurance so badly they can feel the absence of it in their chest. But the words they need most are the ones they can't bring themselves to ask for. They will replay a text that felt slightly colder than usual. They will notice the pause before a reply and feel their whole mood quietly shift. Not because they are dramatic, because small changes can feel dangerous when your heart has learned to listen for loss. So they say nothing. They act normal, stay polite, and try to look emotionally low maintenance. Meanwhile, their mind starts filling in the blanks. Maybe you're pulling away. Maybe they asked for too much. Maybe something changed and they missed it. What hurts is not just the silence itself. It is the private guessing game that silence creates. They want to ask, "Are we okay?" But even that simple sentence can feel loaded with risk. Because if they ask, they might sound needy. If they ask, they might hear the answer they were afraid of. So they try to get certainty without ever asking for it. They read tone, timing, eye contact, and the temperature of your presence. They become students of emotional weather. A delayed goodnight can feel heavier than an actual argument. This is why reassurance can matter so much to someone who rarely requests it. Their need is real, but their fear around needing is just as real. A lot of people think reassurance-seeking always looks obvious. They imagine repeated questions, constant texting, or visible panic. But sometimes it looks nothing like that. Sometimes it looks like someone going quiet while secretly hoping you notice. Sometimes it looks like saying, "It's fine," while your body is stiff and your mind is miles away. Sometimes it looks like becoming extra independent right when you feel most unsure. That is the confusing part. The person who needs warmth the most may suddenly act the hardest to reach. They're not always trying to play games. Often they are trying to protect dignity, control, and the small piece of safety they still feel they own. Because asking for reassurance can feel like handing someone a loaded truth. It reveals where you are tender and how much their response matters. And for some people, that exposure feels more dangerous than staying confused. Uncertainty hurts, but vulnerability can feel humiliating. Usually this pattern did not start in adult relationships. It started when comfort felt inconsistent, confusing, conditional, or emotionally expensive. Maybe love was present, but not predictable. Maybe care existed, but it came with tension, criticism, distance, or sudden emotional shifts. So the child learned something very specific. Meet quietly, monitor closely, and never fully relax. They learned that wanting comfort does not always bring comfort. Sometimes it brings disappointment, irritation, or the feeling of being too much. That lesson does not disappear just because somebody grows up. It follows them into dating, marriage, and even relationships that are objectively safe. So when a loving partner says, "You can always tell me what you need," the words may sound beautiful and still feel hard to trust. Their history speaks louder than the invitation. Part of them wants to believe it. Another part is already bracing for the moment their need becomes inconvenient. This is why reassurance is not just about hearing nice words. It is about what those words have meant in the nervous system for years. For some people, reassurance feels like oxygen. But asking for it feels like admitting they cannot breathe on their own. That is where shame slips in. Not just fear of rejection, but fear of being seen as emotionally dependent. They may be the reliable one in every relationship, the thoughtful one, the calm one, the one other people lean on. And because they are used to holding themselves together, having needs can feel strangely out of character. It does not fit the identity they built to survive. So instead of asking directly, they hope you will sense it. They hope love will be intuitive enough to reach the wound without being told where it is. When that does not happen, they feel hurt twice. First by the absence of reassurance, then by the lonely fact that they still had to ask. That second hurt is important. It can make a person feel unseen even in a relationship that cares about them. Because what they secretly long for is not just comfort. It is to be understood before they have to explain the ache. Of course, that creates impossible expectations sometimes. No partner can perfectly interpret every silence, every pause, every change in breathing. But the longing itself makes sense. It comes from a part of them that got used to surviving through hyperawareness. They learned to read the room before they could read themselves. They became highly attuned to other people and strangely estranged from their own direct asking. So now they can spot a mood shift in seconds. But they may still struggle to say, "I need a little reassurance right now." Sometimes the pattern shows up in texting. They stare at the screen, type the message, then delete it. They want to say, "You feel distant today." Instead, they send something casual, then analyze the response like it contains hidden codes. Sometimes it shows up after a beautiful night together. They felt close, open, maybe even hopeful, and now they are scared by how much it mattered. Instead of moving closer, they pull back a little. Not because they felt nothing, but because they felt too much. Sometimes it appears after conflict. They want repair, tenderness, and proof that the bond is still intact. But their mouth tightens, their tone flattens, and they say they just need space. What they actually need is a safe way back. Sometimes it happens when someone is kind to them for no obvious reason. The kindness lands, but suspicion lands too. They wonder what the catch is. They wonder how long this version of you will last. That is one of the most painful parts of this pattern. Even good love can feel unstable when your body is used to waiting for the turn. Though they may test, without calling it a test, they may become cooler, slower, or less expressive just to see if you still come closer. Not because they want power, because they want proof without having to confess uncertainty. And yet the proof never fully sticks when it is gathered this way. It soothes for a moment, then slips through their hands. Because reassurance does not only fail when other people withhold it, it also fails when a person cannot fully receive what they are given. Someone can say, "I'm here." Someone can say, "I care about you." Someone can say it clearly, steadily, and more than once. But if your body expects inconsistency, calm can feel temporary. Warmth can feel like the beginning of future withdrawal. So instead of absorbing reassurance, they study it. They ask whether it sounded sincere enough, whether the timing was right, whether it will still be true tomorrow. That is why these people often look stronger than they feel. Their outside behavior can seem composed while their inside is running constant emotional calculations. And because they are not loudly asking for reassurance, people may assume they do not need much. That misunderstanding can deepen the loneliness even more. This is how someone ends up feeling alone beside a loving partner. Not unloved exactly, but untranslated. They are carrying need, fear, pride, hope, and old memory all at once. And they are trying to do it without visibly dropping anything. Sometimes they even resent themselves for needing reassurance. They tell themselves they should be more secure by now. But emotional patterns are not corrected by self-criticism. Shame does not make need disappear, it just pushes it underground. Then the underground pressure leaks out in other ways. Irritation, overthinking, distance, numbness, and sudden emotional exhaustion. This is why the issue is rarely just reassurance itself. It is the conflict between needing comfort and fearing what that need exposes. A person like this may deeply value closeness. They may also panic when closeness starts making them feel visible. They may crave a reassuring text all day, then act oddly detached when it finally arrives. Not because the message did not matter, because receiving care can wake up the buried fear of depending on it. Dependence is the word many people quietly react to. They hear it and imagine weakness, loss of control, or being at someone's mercy. So they try to want love without needing anything from it, but that version of love is emotionally impossible. Real intimacy always asks for some form of reliance, not total collapse, not constant validation, but a willingness to be affected. And that is exactly what scares the heavily self-protective person. To be affected means another person can soothe them, disappoint them, and matter in ways they cannot fully control. So they protect themselves in sophisticated ways. They call it independence, standards, realism, or just being careful. Sometimes it is those things, but sometimes it is fear wearing mature language. That does not make them manipulative, it makes them divided. One part reaches for closeness, another part rushes in to cover the reaching. You can see it in the little contradictions. They miss you deeply, but wait all day to answer. They want honesty, but hide their softer reactions. They want reassurance, but speak in signals instead of requests. And often they judge themselves for every bit of it. They know their silence creates confusion, yet speaking still feels harder. This is where compassion matters more than performance. Not indulgence, not endless mind reading, but honest compassion. Because the truth is, reassurance needs are not embarrassing. They are part of being attached to something that matters. When someone matters, uncertainty will always touch you. The goal is not to become untouched. The goal is to become more direct than your fear, to let your need become clearer than your protective habits. That is not easy work. It asks a person to notice the moment before withdrawal hardens into distance. It asks them to catch the sentence behind the sentence. Not whatever, but I felt insecure and didn't know how to say it. Not "I just need space." But part of me wants comfort, and part of me feels ashamed for wanting it. That level of honesty can feel terrifying at first, but it is often the exact thing that turns confusion into closeness. Because healthy reassurance usually responds well to clarity, people who care are often relieved when they finally understand what is happening. They do not have to decode a cold tone or guess what went wrong. They get a real doorway instead of a locked room. Still, not everyone knows how to ask all at once. Sometimes growth begins smaller than that. It can begin with naming the pattern privately. I get quiet when I need comfort most. It can begin with resisting the urge to test. It can begin with asking one simple question before the whole story spirals. It can begin with saying, "I know this sounds small, but reassurance helps me here." That sentence carries more strength than many people realize. Because strength is not the absence of need. Sometimes strength is refusing to let shame speak for your heart. And if this is your pattern, it does not mean you are broken at love. It means you learned to protect yourself before you learned to trust relief. Protection made sense once. It may even have kept you emotionally functional for years. But the same strategy that guards your heart can also keep it hungry. It can stop comfort at the door while telling you it is keeping you safe. That is the quiet tragedy of never asking. You do not only hide your need from other people, you also hide from the experience that could slowly teach your body something new. That care can arrive and stay calm. That asking does not always push love away. That being understood can feel steady, not costly. And no, reassurance alone cannot fix every old pattern, but being able to ask for it changes the emotional landscape. It turns guessing into dialogue. It turns private panic into shared reality. Most of all, it lets love meet the real place where you get scared. Not the polished version, not the self-sufficient mask, but the unguarded truth underneath. Because the people who never ask are often the ones carrying the most unsaid tenderness. They are not empty, cold, or indifferent. They are often overflowing in silence. They feel deeply, then hide the evidence. So if you are one of them, this is the part worth remembering. Your need for reassurance is not the problem. The problem is how often you have had to hold that need alone, and how convincing your self-protection has become. You do not become safer by never reaching. You only become harder to find. And sometimes, the most healing sentence is not dramatic at all. It is simply, "I need a little reassurance right now."